Wind up.
There we go. I see live.
There you go.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Rundeck Office Hours for November. Today, we're going to be talking about log filtering and data passing with some of our Rundeck experts and co-founders. We have Alex Honor, Greg Schuler, and Damon Edwards from our team here. My name's Dawn, and I'm in marketing at Rundeck, and we're just really happy to have you here today. Also, feel free, although we do have a topic that we're going to go over and give a quick demo of, if you have any other questions about your Rundeck usage, this is the time to ask them while we have all of our great minds on the phone. And then if you will mute your audio when you're not talking, that would be helpful just to keep the background noise to a minimum. And you can either chat or, break into the conversation however you want to ask a question. That's fine. And we will, as I said in the beginning, and some other people have joined, we will have a recording of the session, and we'll send you that link after we're done. So with that, I will turn it over, or Alex or Damon, or who's going to start?
Sorry, I was struggling there. I think we just jump into Alex. I mean,
Okay.
Main event.
All right. Here you go, Alex.
Hey, all right. Let me figure out how to share my screen. Well, hello, everybody. We're going to be talking about really a couple of capabilities you can do with a new feature that was recently put out. One is filtering the log output to collect data so that you can use it in a subsequent step. But the other one is to just give you some more control about how you format the output. So we're hearing more and more that different kind of users, maybe level 1 support users, or maybe a business user, maybe somebody less technical, you want to have a nicer presentation of what your job produces. So we'll show you some of those new features as well. And I'm really interested to find out, just generally in this topic, how you would like to apply this, or what problems that these features might help you with that have been hard to work around, or maybe just not have been possible. So that will really help us kind of prioritize how we evolve these new features. So yeah, let us know about that. Okay, so let me share my screen. I forget how to do this.
On your left, the left nav bar should say.
I got it. Yeah. All right. So let me just begin here with a couple of scenarios that we hear about. This job here is a database job. It updates the database with some new catalog data in my little demo environment. And I want to do a couple of things. Number one, you can see that I've got some user choices here. I've got a couple of different catalogs I can collect. And there's an option type here that reads out of the key store so I can connect to the database. And there's two things I really want to accomplish. Number one is I want to prevent anybody from echoing or printing that secret value into the log output, because of course that would be bad to have a clear text password or secret show up there and then hanging out, and you might forget, and then somebody finds it and gets into the database. So that's one concern. The other concern is this SQL script connects to the database, but then it does some job processing and generates a JSON output stream. And if you've ever dealt with JSON, it's not always formatted with nice indents and a kind of a pretty structure so you can read it. Sometimes it just looks like one big long string or big kind of jumble of text. So, and I don't want to have to program that. I don't want to have to parse it and figure out how to make it look nice in the Rundeck web page. So those are my problems. I'm going to run this job and just show you what it looks like after I've used a couple of those features I just mentioned. Number one, I tried to print out the credential information in the DB Connect part of the job. And you can see that instead of the actual password value, there is this word here called secured in square braces, and it's this kind of magenta color. What's happened there is that the log filter has detected this as a secure option type and replaced that value in the log stream with this string. And now we don't have to worry about making sure it leaked in and having to worry about that kind of problem. The other thing here is in the rebuild step, got a couple of catalogs that we talked about, their inventory catalog and the partner catalog. Well, this was that JSON output that came back. And now it is rendered into an HTML table. And it's a lot easier for me to look through here and understand the tables that were updated and some of the other kind of parts of this job. I didn't have to program that, and that was a nice time saver. And then lastly, I want to give maybe the user a big kind of, we call it a progress badge, that everything was completed and it was a success. And it's a nice green box, and I've thrown in an emoji here, and so the user is clear, like it's green and thumbs are up. So the job is successful. So these are 3 examples of how you can control the log output of a job. Let's open this job definition up and just take a look at how that was done. So if you're on 2.10, you will have seen this feature here, log filter. That's what we've been talking about. A log filter is a new kind of plugin. I'll click this link here just to show you the ones that are in this demo. This log filter here, it will parse output and save it as a named key. We'll talk about that afterwards. But some other examples of things you can do. You might want to mute the output. Maybe you've got a job that just generates a lot of stuff because the tooling that you're using is kind of noisy, and it could be confusing or not very useful to the job runner. So you could just quiet that type of output. I'll show you an example of this highlight output in a moment, but maybe there's some words or a line of text that you want to make really obvious. Maybe you want it to be bold and in green or red. There's different text effects that you can apply to a regular expression, and that might make something stand out that's important. In this case, it's preventing you having to figure out generating ANSI color codes into your log output, which you could do, but that's just kind of extra scripting work, and this makes it a lot easier. We talked about the masked passwords already, and this render formatted data example, we'll show some more examples of this later, but this will, given a type of data, apply a rendering to it based on that type of data. So JSON was that first example, but you can think of CSV. And if there's other kinds of data that you're facing all the time, like to hear more about that. I'll show you some more examples of that one. And then that one with the little emoji and the green box, we call that a progress badge. That's another example of that. So some early implementations of this log filter plugin. I can apply these globally, meaning that no matter what steps I have in my job, a global log filter will process that. But in my example here, you're seeing that I can do that per step. And if you just click this little button here underneath the add error handler, you see this new add log filter, and it brings up that menu I just showed you. And here I have the masked passwords one. So here I am attempting to print out the DB password option. And so because we have this masked password here, I'm going to replace it with that word and make it magenta. So that avoids us having to worry about that getting into the output stream. Here is the script that generates JSON, and clicking here, here are some of the other formats that you can just pass into the plugin. But if you really need a lot of control, you can actually just generate HTML into your output stream, and it will just kind of do that in line. So if you really need a lot more control over how you want to present it, and you don't mind dropping into the HTML level, you can do that, and that gives you a lot of flexibility. Markdown, a bit similar. If you are really disciplined in how you format your output as Markdown, then this will turn it into HTML through a Markdown rendering. So, like I said earlier, if there's other kind of data types, we'd really like to hear about those. We can add that to the list here. So that's the render format. And then finally, that last example I talked about, the progress badge. This is the what I want to show in the badge. So it takes emojis. We support the emojis that come from this library here. It's pretty much all of the ones that you could kind of expect, silly ones and useful ones. We are talking about having some kind of autocomplete or easier way of picking from the the ASCII specification for that. But in any case, that's how you get the emoji in there. And what you're trying to match in the output. So I'm trying to match this entire line, but you can use a regular expression here to show that. And if I mute, what that really means, it's just going to read in in this case, it will read in all of the output from that step and not show any of it, but it's still going to look for that string in all that output. So this is a little bit like that other quiet output plugin, except that you can still display some text of your own. And there's some other features here you can do if you want to have control over the font and the size and the color of the text. You have some more control over this. So that's the last one in that example. So yeah, pretty much you can just sort of implement your jobs the way you have been, but now you can think about maybe how you want to apply some of this log filtering to control how you present the output. I think this might be a good time just to stop and see if there's any questions just up to this point. Okay, well, just jump in there, stop me if you do have a question about that. All right, so let's see. Do I have another example here on this one? Why don't we actually just step through taking a job and applying this, so we can kind of do it from the start. Let's see. We've got how about this one here? Rebalance. So what I tend to do is I'll have a job. I'll kind of get it. And the output that I'm generating now is really just more for me as the job writer to give the feedback that I want, so I can make sure the thing is working the way I want. You can see I've got different lines of output here that I'm thinking about now. Maybe when the rebalance start complete happens, I want to turn that a certain color. So let's edit this here. And add a log filter, and we'll highlight the output. So here's that pattern. Startup complete, that's basically the whole expression. I could put some of this in kind of regular expression syntax, but this is a pretty simple case. I don't really need to do that. I've got a foreground color here. Maybe I'll make that green. Well, we're just going to make this one kind of silly. We'll have a black background. And there's this mode. So normally I use bold, but let's pretend we're back in 1997. We're going to make it blank. So we'll do that one there. Let's just run it and make sure we're. And there it is. Look at that, it's blinking, and it's reversed kind of contrast there. You know, part of this is really just thinking about the user experience for the people who are running your jobs more than anything else. What's useful to them, what you're trying to bring to their attention, or keep from distracting them from things you don't care about. Let's pick the second rebalance stop job. You know, I think I'll say that in this case, I don't care about the I don't care about this normally. So this is an interesting feature here with the quiet output. When the job is at the normal log level, which is by default, it will look in there, but I can control where it does go. I could say it goes into the verbose log level. So that gives the job runner one extra choice, that if, you know, let's say it's not working the way I expect, and the job writer says, well, run the job in verbose mode, then it won't be quiet. So it'll be quiet normally, but if you run it in verbose mode, you'll see it. And we're going to say quiet matched output here. And let's see, save it, run the job now. And now we don't see that output there. So, you know, in our little story, we've decided that that's just not very important to tell the user, and we're just going to hide it. On second thought, I probably would have made that the quiet thing, but that's okay. You get the idea. Maybe we'll want to highlight this one. So the log filter, we'll highlight that one. And well, we've already done that. Why don't we do a different one? We'll do the progress badge maybe. That's the word we're looking for. And since this is easy for me to remember, we'll just do a +1 and we'll say complete. There's some control here. If your regular expression doesn't match, you can basically tell the plugin not to do anything. So it's not that. As you can see, I'm on the recent version of Rundeck. I'm on 2.3.0 Pro, which is based on 2.10.1. Most of these features here are in 2.10. There's our little progress badge. So, you know, you can use your imagination for really how you want to present this to the user. Like I said, you can change the color of this background. So if maybe you're matching an error message, you might want to turn this into an orange color or a yellow color or something else, just to let the user know things didn't go well. Okay, so there's a little bit on the rendering and controlling the appearance of the output. Let's talk about capturing output. So here I have a whole number of examples, but let's take a look at this one here, this definition. So what this, we call it the key value data filter, does is it looks for a pattern in the output, and then how the pattern is matched determines what new data, what new context data is available to your job. And you can see here that in the first step, it's going to echo this string. It's got Rundeck data : Moogle equals toenail, and you can put some node context variables in here also if you want. This is just a normal kind of command step. This convention here of calling this Rundeck data as a prefix before the variable or the key name that you're going to want to use later on that's just a convention. You can define your own conventions or not, but just to kind of give some guidance about how you might want to do that, we created this little convention here. And so in this step, pretend that the result of the step needs to tell us what the Moogle is, and I need to know about that in a subsequent step. So you can see I've got now this value here called data.moogle. So this the problem, without this feature is it was very difficult to get steps to share data like this. A very common case that really drove this kind of example is I'm creating something in a Rundeck job. Maybe I'm creating a new instance of something, and I can't know what the identifier to that thing is because some backend's producing it, and yet my following steps need to use that as an address or some kind of reference so I can do new things to it. So, maybe you're spinning up a new instance and you get the instance identifier, and then once you have that, maybe you're going to apply some other actions to it. So this was very difficult to do without this capability. That's one scenario. But what you're really trying to do is just get your steps to be able to communicate things that happened earlier to be known by things that happen later. So that's the general problem to solve. But because Rundeck is a distributed orchestration tool, this may not just be happening on the Rundeck server. This can be happening, these steps can be running across some number of machines. So another problem to solve is what is the value of that computed data for a given node. So that's another thing I'll show you, but that's another concern. And then finally, maybe there is something that's step specific. So you can see here one exec exit code and two exec exit code. This lets me traverse the captured data down to the step level. So it's very extensive in how you can think about where the data is coming from and how you might want to access a particular element of that data. And then finally, because this might be happening over, let's say we're running the uname command here across a number of machines, and I just want to get the uname values for all of them. There's these little kind of syntax, sugar syntax to give that to us as a list. So this example kind of shows you a lot of what's potentially available to you in using that. So let me just edit this job really quick so we can look a little closer at this key value, the way it's set up. So as I mentioned, we have this convention, which just means that you don't have to think about the regex that you would have to design. You can just basically, as I said, print out something that looks like that, and the default regex will know how to do it for you. But if you have some existing script, you can adapt this regex to match the kind of output that you're already getting. It's a regex, and you notice there's two group patterns, grouping operators here. So this is the first part of the pattern to match, and this will become the second pattern to match. So when you have a regular expression that essentially is looking for a key and a value, you need to put in these two groups. So it knows, the first one is the key name and the second one is the value. But I've run into plenty of cases where the output doesn't have a key name. I just know what the value is going to look like. Or maybe the output has the value I want with some other words, but those other words in that line aren't what I want to use as the key. So in that case, I can just have one group to match, and then just name it the way I want here. I can just name the variable whatever I want, and then that will end up becoming a data dot whatever the name I put here. So you have complete control over how you name things, but we just give you this little convention. This checkbox here, it's a little bit like not so much a debug feature, but sometimes you want to know that you were indeed parsing the patterns and getting the keys set the way you want. And when you run this with the log data check mark, it will, in the job output, it will put a little table together for you that shows you all of the data that it found through the job processing as a kind of tally of what it found. And that might be important for auditing, but in my own personal use, it's really kind of just been to make sure I'm catching all the data that I wanted or expected. I might turn that off in the final version of the job. So let's run this job and see it in action. So you can see here it's in that first step, if you recall, it's just going to print out this with the node name, and then we're going to, you can see here, I'm going to get the uname data and save it as uname and the name of the operating system and my node, and this one I'm going to tell me the uptime. So those are the keys that we're looking for there. Here's my uname. I'm on a Mac, you can see, and my uptime. So this is what I printed out to the output stream. And because I had the log data checkbox, Rundeck is telling me, okay, here's what I got. This is the value you're using, or you're going to get for uname, and here's the value you're going to get for uptime. But in these steps here, I'm just going to refer to them as these new context variables. So in the third step, I can just say data.uname, and there it is. This is the data.uname. And over here, in this step, I'm going to start looking at, more at the step level. What does that look like? So in the fourth step, it's pretty much the same thing, but it's letting me kind of be more selective about what output from what step I'm looking for. As far as the exit codes here, exec is the type of step it is, and here we can see it's for step 1 it's exit code 0, and from step 2 it's exit code 0. We could have thrown a non-exit, non-zero exit. We would have seen that there. And well, I only ran this job on one node, so this isn't so exciting, but because there's just one value for the uname. But if I had, let's say, I've got one node here, but if I had 5 nodes that this dispatches to, I would see the uname for all 5 nodes as a list here. So that can be useful if you're kind of doing a report about, let's say, the current state of your environment, or you're building some kind of diagnostic, and you want to run the same command and then tally it all up and then get a summary at the end. The syntax is kind of powerful for that type of that kind of use case. Yeah, so this is another good point to stop and hear if there's any questions. No questions? I can show, again, get more specific to some of these scenarios. But like, as I said earlier, we're really interested to see kind of in your own use cases, maybe the workarounds that you've had to do, and learn maybe how you can apply this this new plugin type to make it a little more clean and easier for you.
Yep. Yeah, as Alex said, we'd love to hear your use cases, and also if you have any other questions just about Rundeck in general, feel free to jump in with those now, even if they're not related to the log filtering functionality.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. One issue I have is I have to take and run jobs Unix-based, and we're doing expect scripts because we've got to do a SU to another user. We're not allowed to log in as the one user. Expect, as like Windows, doesn't always return proper return codes. Is there a way using this filtering to be able to parse out the log to define whether to have it pass or fail?
Yeah, there's a couple of strategies for that. One might be not so much the log filter to find out, but would be the error handler. So in the error handler, you can look up what the result code is for that step. And then, so it could be something like this, basically. I could say I have a step that, you know, if result code, something like this. Equals 1 or something, or whatever you're expecting, or maybe not equals 0, probably more up your alley. Then maybe I'll just say true, and then I'll say keep going on success, right? Because
Well, I'm having the opposite. My problem is there's, in an expect script, what expect does is it executes the commands. And even if a command fails, as long as the expect script executes and succeeds, it shows a 0. But I'm getting basically a false positive. And that's what I'm trying to do is, in the output, it'll show me this portion of the expect script failed, but whenever the expect script finishes, the job or the step finishes with a return code of 0 because expect completed successfully.
I got you now. Yeah, so you want to parse the output for the false positive, whatever that message is that you could.
Correct. And I could use the key value pair to get whether we had a success or failure or any failures in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the only thing I can think of right now is use that to take and turn around and go to the next step and use that parameter to say whether success or failure. Basically,
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking about now, is that you would match the line looking for the, whatever that pattern is that represents the false positive. That'll become a new key in the data, data dot whatever you called it. And then the next step would be to look at that string and see if it, the false positive example, and then to, somehow cause the job to fail. Maybe just exit 1 or something like that.
Yeah, that was what I was thinking.
Yeah. But that's a really, I can see that being a pretty common case, and that might be a good next plugin to have, which is basically fail if pattern matches X,
Because Windows has that problem a lot. Windows doesn't do good return codes a lot of times.
Oh yeah, they don't follow the Unix philosophy. It could be.
They don't follow the Windows philosophy.
Okay. Yeah, I know certain ones have like 10 sort of valid exit codes that mean some kind of success.
Yeah, and that's where I've had, because that's where my biggest issues are, is getting false positives on a job, because we do half Windows, half Unix. The Unix, I only get that with the expect script, because expect the way it works. And with the other, it's easier to have it, this way I can parse it and at least do a verify step after that first step.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's what you would do today, but I'm taking a note here that it would be very convenient just to have that be a new kind of log filter plugin, because that seems like a recurring case.
Yeah, because that's what I was looking at. I tried with the log filter. didn't work.
Okay. Yeah. I'm glad to hear that. Now you're using expect. Curious, are you automating like network devices or what? Just
no, what it is our company has a policy. You cannot log into the machine with the service account on the machine. So our applications that I do deploy and start and stop of applications. Well, when we deploy it or we start and stop it, we have to execute that as the user, the service account. Well, we can't log in as a service account, so we have to log in as our special account that lets us log in from remote. With that account, we then have to SU, so we use an expect script to SU to the user, pass the password, which masking the password is a really good event there. And then it will allow us to run the job as the user.
Okay.
That's the whole reason. It's a kludge, but it's based off of our corporate security.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah. And we're hearing that more often, that they're trying to move away from a service account so they get better auditing.
Yeah. And I like the password, being able to have it, either in a file or keys and stuff like that, so you can point to it easier.
Mm-hmm.
Because that, whenever we have to change a password, that saves my life.
Okay, well, glad to hear that.
We got 800 nodes and trying to set everything, probably 150 different passwords.
Mm-hmm.
Each job would be a pain.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, good question.
Any other questions? General Rundeck questions? Okay.
Well, if nobody else, I guess I got.
You can ask another one.
Right now we're using the standard, whether you want to call it open source or version. And then you have the Pro and the Pro cluster. What is the big difference between the Pro and the Pro cluster? I like the idea of the cluster for failover, and right now I have 8 Rundeck servers. No, 9. So, and is there a limit to number of jobs on a Rundeck server before it starts having issues, and also configuring the server, what kind of resources, memory, CPU, etc. for the system?
Yeah, there isn't really a hard limit per se as far as how many jobs you could have on a single server. There is a configuration parameter that controls the total number of concurrent jobs that can be executed. Really, what governs the size of the machine or how much you want to spread the load is just the kind of processing that's going on, and is it a lot of steps that run on the Rundeck servers, or are they steps that run on remote nodes? Things like that really determine how much scale you need. As far as Pro versus Pro cluster, Pro is kind of the supported version with some Pro-specific plugins that is similar to what you're used to now with the open source. So there's a different workflow engine, has some advanced capabilities. There are Pro-specific plugins, like I was just bringing up an example here, different kind of UI visualizations that you would get in Pro. And then, of course, with Cluster, you get all that stuff, but you have the ability to have multiple members of the cluster, and you get what we call the cluster manager. And the cluster manager does a few things. You can see here it has a roll-up view of activity. Each member generates some heartbeat data, so the cluster manager knows who's alive and who's available to do job processing. You can write policies against how you, let's say, tag your members of the cluster. So in this example here, I've got a project called eOptions, and I want to have all those job executions run on this member here. So I can do things like that. You know, there's some new load balancing features as well. If I've got a whole farm, you mentioned you had 8 members. If you wanted to consolidate all of those into one kind of central management interface, then that's a pretty good use for it. It helps with things like maintenance here. I can take this one out of active and put it into passive. That's how I would, you know, maybe do an upgrade or some other kind of maintenance work. And the internal dispatching of the cluster routes around it then, so I can have like a rolling upgrade or a rolling maintenance type of scenario.
Right, so it could, in the cluster, you could have different ones on different levels as you're doing the rolling upgrade.
Yeah, yeah. And then sometimes the cluster is important for just your network design. Like, let's say you have remote nodes on a subnet and you don't want all of the cluster to be able to be on that network, or maybe you just want to put one of the members that's close to that subnet. You know, then you can control where the SSH originates from, or, you know, just have more access control about that. So that's more about network design, but that's another kind of a pattern. To me, the cluster is more like kind of Lego bricks. You know, the scenarios I'm telling you about are just examples, but you know, it's all based on the same software. It's just kind of configuration policy.
Right. Well, I mean, from my understanding, what I understand, right, like if I put all 8 of mine on there and I had 4 of them I allocated to Windows, 4 of them allocated to Unix. I like to keep them separate. That way, it just keeps the plugins, because the Windows plugin is a piece. I have those set up, and then would I be able to take and have a tag on each one, so I could have by default these run these jobs, and whenever these jobs call in, it'll run over here based on either the target node or the job step itself?
Not to that granularity, but picture you have use these tags to say things like Unix or Windows, and that tag is then used in the policy to know, oh, I've got a job execution that's got to go to this kind of tag. We currently do it on a project boundary, but you know, we are thinking about in the next version of the cluster about maybe making that on a per job basis, or maybe something that crosses the project boundary. But yeah, at this point, you'd have to organize your jobs a bit to follow the projects to easily.
I have that pretty much. Most of my jobs are executed. We have Jenkins front end where everything is done through Jenkins, and then it calls the Rundeck to execute, you know, whatever step it needs. That gives us the ability to, in Jenkins, I'm able to have multiple jobs that don't need Rundeck, and then at the end of the chain, it will just call the Rundeck job, which will then call the series.
Yeah.
That's in Rundeck. So I don't really have anything that runs directly from Rundeck, but they are all based off of projects. We have a project per application.
Okay. But, yeah. Then I think what we have in cluster now would support that scenario of managing the Windows on one side and Unix on another side of the cluster.
All right.
Yeah, forgot to mention that. That's another good reason, is to isolate the Windows specific stuff.
Yeah. Right now, what I have is and for every Jenkins, I have a Rundeck. So I got pairs, and one Jenkins does Windows, or really 4 Jenkins do Windows, 4 Jenkins do Unix, and then the corresponding Rundeck for each one does just the application or the OS that the Jenkins does.
Actually, I was going to click over here. You mentioned what other things are part of Pro. There's a feature that just came out. We're going to do a hangout on this topic, but let's consider this a little teaser for people to think about. And that's a new user interface to the access control rules. I know anybody who's had to deal with that generally faces looking at this kind of YAML file and trying to learn what keywords you use and so on. It's tough, right? So this is a new feature here we're going to do another talk on, but I thought I just mentioned it to you in case anybody on the line was interested, and let us know. We're going to be doing a whole thing on just this.
Yeah, and let me state that all of the changes, I guess it was in 2.10, where all the configurations can be done through the graphical instead of having to go to the command line.
Yeah.
Really nice. I don't have a problem with the command line. I live on it, but a lot of my team are Windows people, and they can't figure out how to look at command prompt if they're like to come down.
Yeah, it took us a while to get there, but you know, part of what forces our hand on that, besides just it being inconvenient for some, is that you know, more of the time now we're seeing Rundeck in a container, and they're not, you know, it's not feasible for you to even log into the running container. So we need a new way of getting at some of this config data, and yeah, so. Okay, well, I won't spend too much time on that, but just let everybody know that this is kind of be the next little office hours topic is this new feature.
Yeah, if you enjoyed the ACL editing in the open source, you're really going to like the one that's here in Pro now. So suggest you can go and give it a try. And also, I'd be remiss if I didn't add that Pro comes with support, right? So you get to talk to us whenever you want if you're a Pro subscriber.
Working together my proposal to
Cool.
management.
Good to hear. Hey, and you can always download a demo of Pro if you want. You know.
Oh, I have. I do it periodically and try to see what's different.
Cool. Sounds good. So yeah, I'll dominate the floor. Anybody else have any questions or comments or ideas? Have we got Horatio or John, Doa? Any? I know you're a happy Pro user. Anything you want to add?
They're quiet, happy Pro users.
Yep. Take the mute button off.
No, you guys laid out. I just wanted to see some examples of the log stuff. It was a little confusing in the docs, so this was really helpful.
Ah, okay. So now, what would make the docs better? I mean, just more examples, or?
I honestly couldn't tell you. I mean, what you showed me wasn't really that different. Just actually seeing it happen helped, I guess.
Okay. So maybe some demos, maybe, or something.
What's that?
Maybe some demos or some kind of more detailed examples might help you.
It wouldn't hurt. I think that and the ACL policies are probably the two, but they're also the two most complicated things you wrote. So of course the docs are going to be complex. So,
yeah, I don't know. Are you? Yeah, this new. I mean, this new Pro. I don't know if you're a Pro user or not, but this new Pro feature is kind of aiming towards that as well, right? It's got the
plus. I'm just using the OSS one, but even the one you put in there really made a difference. Like, but ACLs are complicated, period. So it's not like you guys can just magically make them easy to use.
Yeah, and I think also with this, the kind of syntax or the format, I guess that we've come up with here to work within this graphical editor, I think will also help the people on the open source side.
Yeah,
right. A little more of a convention to follow, I should say.
It definitely does. It definitely does.
Yeah. But
one thing you'd ask about that would help the documentation is having little videos like him showing what he was doing, just simple steps for each of the controls, the parameters, markdown, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Make it a lot better, because it's hard a lot of times to just reading something, even with some pictures, to grasp what it is whenever you've never worked it before. Whenever I first learned Rundeck, which was 4 years ago, was whenever I started with it, it was one of the hardest things for me to grasp. well, first I had trouble understanding why I needed that after, using Jenkins. Now I completely understand. But having it and getting to understand how to configure and set up everything can be a little daunting, at least on the open source. Now the pro version, with support, of course, it would be different where you'd be able to call up and get assistance. But videos, small videos, just explaining the different components would be very helpful, I think, to everybody.
Got it. We'll make a note of that. Something we have to do more of. All right. Well, I know we're kind of running up against the top of the hour. Dawn, Alex, anything else, or anybody else want to ask anything?
No, I think that's we're good. Just to remind everybody, especially if you're working on this log filtering, we will have the video of this session on the YouTube channel, so you can go back and play, and as you're trying to set it up yourselves, have Alex kind of leading you along the way. And then I would just ask too, if there are any other topics for the next session. This will be the last session for this year, but we'll come back in January. Things that you like to talk about would be either you can chat it to us, or if you want to say something right now, that's fine. But we really want to target this toward what you're interested in, and we can always highlight new features. But if they're even, older features that are presenting issues, or you need like a walkthrough with, we're happy to do that as well. So I think with that, I don't know, Alex, do you have anything else?
No, sounds good. Yeah, look forward to the next one.
Okay.
Just really quick, thanks again for making this thing. It makes my job so much easier.
Oh, good.
Well, you never get tired of hearing that. That's awesome.
That is the definitely why we're here and doing it, because we've seen firsthand the struggles that ops people have. So we're trying with each release to just make the job easier and better and more rewarding. So thank you for that. And I would just say also, if you want to keep up, I know, especially if you're a pro user, or even if you're not, we do usually do a blog post on new features, and those do have videos in them. So if you subscribe to the Rundeck blog, you will be able to see those videos that the guys do. Okay. And if you have any other questions, feel free to just email. You can email us directly, or just to info@rundeck.com, and we'll be happy to direct you to the right person or answer your question. Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Everybody.
All right.